What up? If you're listening on Stitcher or SoundCloud or iTunes, I just flashed the double rock signs. If you're on YouTube, you saw that, and you didn't need me to say it. It's your boy, Robin Black. Quick apologies. So before I get into that, I got a little thing here. Is this right side on your camera, or is it backwards? It's the right side. Conor versus Khbib. Mental. Conor versus Khbib. Fight. Conor versus Khbib. Intangibles. And then maybe we'll pull up some friends on Instagram Live for some Q&A. All right? It's at Robin Black MMA on Instagram Live. And sometimes people are like, man, you just go on way too long. You just like meander and talk. If you listen on the podcast, though, that's probably what you like. But some of you are just like, this guy just fucking goes on forever. If so, at Robin Black MMA on Instagram, I put up 1 minute breakdowns. Just 1 minute, and that's it. There's only so much you can meander, even me, in 1 minute. So as you see from my sign, it is today, nothing exists in the world except for Conor McGregor facing Khabib Nurmagomedov for the UFC lightweight title. There's nothing else. Mark, is there anything else? No, there's nothing else. Donald Trump probably said something, or like something Dana did, or like, I don't know, like there could be some terrible thing happening in the world, and if that's the case, we should probably pay attention to it. But barring those things, Conor McGregor will face Khabib Nurmagomedov next weekend in Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena. And if you like fighting, this is what is of interest to you. I think when I say if you like fighting, right away you're like, well, I like fighting. And that's true, you do. There's no fucking way you're hanging out with me and here in this in-depth analysis of fighting unless you do. But what about the other 1.5 million people that will spend $69 US to get this on pay-per-view? Who are they? Do they like fighting? Not always. At least not usually. At least it's not important enough usually. But for some reason, they're drawn to this. They're drawn to this. And I think that is what we will get to first. So we've got a little new thing we've been doing. It's been maybe a month or so now where we do a long-form podcast. It's fun. It's very helpful for me, and it's very enjoyable for me. And then we break it up into different pieces after, if it works. Mark, also, I should tell you, is it going to be at Enjoy the Hostilities?
Yeah.
So by the time this is up, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Enjoy the Hostilities. If for some reason that's already taken, which I don't think it is, it will probably then be at Enjoy the Hostilities, my friends. But it'll probably be at Enjoy the Hostilities, and Mark will take little clips from this, 1 minute clips to share even there, and I'll send some of those up on my site at Robin Black MMA. So why did I bring up that like 1.5 million other people and their friends? So it isn't 1.5 million more people. It is 1.5 million more people who have made this purchase with 3 to 11 other people in their homes watching it. So we got 5, 10 million, bars full of people. We got 20 million people watching this. Why? And that brings us to sort of the mentality. And we will talk about Conor's mentality. We'll talk about this ice-cold, undefeated Russian, Dagestani killer's mentality. We'll talk about all that. But I'm also interested in our mentality. So what is it to have your imagination captured in this way by this man or these men? And that's a very good question. 20 million of those people who would not identify themselves as a fight fan, but do watch fights a couple of times a year, for some reason this fight means something to them. That is our personal reaction to one or more of these individuals and their behavior and what they represent. So, and we will quickly, I shouldn't say quickly because I can't predict where this shit goes, but we will get into Conor's mind games, as we like to call them. Dana calls them mental warfare. There's a lot of different ways we describe this, but we'll also talk about what it is to grow up the type of man that Khabib Nurmagomedov is. It's a very unique man from a very unique upbringing, and that's real. But I'm using our own perspectives as a doorway to it, so hopefully you don't mind humoring me on this. Why would another, where 200,000 or 300,000 people would pay to get this, and then, the friends that watch it with them and the people who stream it illegally, and that makes 1 million or a couple million, and in this case, it could be 10 or 20 million, including all the people in the rooms. Why do they care? Why do we care? Why? Like what? We say, oh, he captures the imagination of people, or he creates controversy, or, people get emotionally attached, or it attracts the casual viewer, however you want to say it. For some reason, individual human beings are drawn to this. And I say that way because everyone's someone, just like you, or me, or Mark, or anybody. They're just people. These are people. And when we talk about, large groups of people as conservatives or Republicans or hardcore or casual or fight fans or video game fans, or when we do any of that stuff, sometimes what we're doing is undermining that these are individual humans having individual human experiences. What we can say is that those experiences connect, or they are as wide as they are, that maybe you can group some of them. But why are some people drawn to this, and why are some people so deeply attached to this? Mark, why do you watch some people? What are your first thoughts as to why people respond to this?
Well, I think they're invested to a certain extent. They're invested either as fans, or they're invested to see the other person lose.
Okay. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was asking about. Because the next thing is, why? Why would anybody be invested? Because emotion, attachment, love,
charisma.
And charisma goes both ways. Charisma can inspire and motivate and create love and attachment. It can also create hate and jealousy and anger and bitterness and just that, no way, we don't want that. We don't like that, for many reasons. But you create this. This is created. And yes, I don't know that anybody would argue this statement I'm going to make. It is certainly no disrespect. If you know me, you know how much I love Eddie Alvarez. You know how much I admire Khbib Nurmagomedov. You know how much of a fan of Dustin Poirier I am. You know how much respect I have for Jose Aldo. But these people without Conor do not create this. I don't think anybody would argue that. Do you? No, I don't think anybody would argue. I think simple math would say that a Dustin Poirier or Khbib fight has this many people interested, and then you add Conor and it's this many people. And sometimes instead of first you might deny that to be true, but then it's difficult to do when you just use the math and the evidence. So then next, some people would try to somehow diminish this statement by saying, marketing this, or, the marketing machine or whatever. Nobody has ever spent money marketing something that does not gain you value by marketing it. And I've seen that. I think I had this conversation ever so briefly with Joe Rogan on his JRE when he was so kind to invite me. It's a real pleasure when you get to go and hang out with Joe. It really is. But we were talking about Amanda Nunes and Ronda Rousey, and how when Ronda, there was nobody who thought, none of the people who were spending money promoting Ronda imagined that Amanda would lose. And this, again, is no disrespect to Amanda Nunes, somebody I admire greatly. But if you spend, we'll just pull up some money, $10 million to promote Ronda Rousey, and you put $10 million to promote Amanda Nunes, you will not get the same amount of viewership for your money. Mark, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I don't think anybody with any sort of experience or real gives any consideration to this would disagree that if we took $50 million and invested it in trying to get people attached to Chad Mendes, who I admire. Again, this is not I hope this wouldn't come off disrespectful. This is just simple, non-emotional analysis. And then $50 million or whatever I just said with Conor McGregor, I think that for some reason you will get a bigger return. You will have more people buy the thing, or more people. Well, this is all market driven and this is all finance driven, but more people will buy the Conor McGregor pay-per-view or shirt or.
It's the same reason why Reebok dumped money into Paige Van Zandt, Sage Northcutt right off the bat before they.
So people are like, why can't you put the marketing machine into my fighter X? Why are you putting it into Sage Northcutt? It's not because they randomly selected this kid. It's because they know that $50 million in Sage Northcutt and $50 million in Mark Manaharan will pay off more for Sage Northcutt. And so what is this thing? So you may disagree for whatever reason. If you do, I'm sorry. I haven't done my job to get this across well enough, and that's on me. It's not on you. But if you do agree, then we have to say, what is that thing? And that thing is very, very, very hard to describe. And I've tried to study it, and I've tried to study people who've studied it, and I've tried to look at it. But it has something to do with creating that attachment or hatred of an individual. And, you know, the ones earlier in this phase, and Elvis and the Beatles are some of the earliest in this, although of our modern age, King Tutankhamun, was an earlier one. Or who was that beautiful princess in Egypt with
Cleopatra.
Cleopatra. I mean, this has existed a long fucking time before the Beatles came along. But in our modern example, we are looking at and we're always looking for some bite-sized ways to describe it. Cult of personality, superstar, whatever we want to call it. But it's something. It's a thing. And to me, sorry I'm taking the long route, but this is what I do. And I thank you for taking it with me, those that do. For me, this thing is connected to the ability to make Eddie Alvarez not perform well in the fight, to make Dustin Poirier say, yeah, I guess he was in my head. Also, Michael Johnson said that Khbib was in his head at one point. Michael Johnson also said later that Poirier was in his head, actually. And Diaz. We're not picking on Michael Johnson. In fact, I think I'm wrong about that, and it was only Diaz that he said that about. I was fishing through my Rolodex of information.
Even Henry Hoof said it in the corner during that fight.
Yeah, that Diaz
was getting in his head.
Yeah. So what is that thing? I think it's connected. I think that it is connected. I think a lot of it is the same thing. What it is the ability to influence. Okay, if we take it down to its nugget, and that is, I took the long way here because if I just said Conor can influence crowds, he influences people, they get that, and, he can also influence Jose Aldo. I don't know if I did as good a job. And if I did, then I apologize for the long route. But that very same thing, that thing that's hard to describe, that thing that the Beatles had, didn't matter that much because the Beatles aren't fighting another band. They influence the audience buys records, the audience scream. When the audience screams, it makes some other people go, the Beatles is bullshit. These guys are ruining society. Elvis was the same thing. I'm sure Cleopatra, and I'm sure Tutankhamun, who, if you look at the history of what happened with Tutankhamun and you look at Justin Bieber, you will be shocked by how similar they are in different eras. But that's way outside the point. But the ability to influence us, to love and or hate McGregor, to admire him, to despise him, all of these things, to deeply connect to the people who fight him in different ways than we have. And don't trust me, people have always they've loved Khbib for a long time. Before Conor McGregor came along, and I say this to people a lot as we're talking about this. If you pull up Khbib according to any modern metric, like say Instagram is a very modern metric, Khbib has 5.8 million followers. Now, could have been 4.1 or 3.9 before Conor, but it was a shitload. And trust me when I tell you, these are the modern metrics. It doesn't matter Q rating and internet searches and ratings on the Tonight Show. That Khabib's post, any Khbib post, here's him training with a guy, that got 455,000 I was going to say views, but likes. That means people watched it and made an action. That is a shitload more than anybody who watches The Tonight Show. So do not misunderstand me. Khabib Nurmagomedov, in and of his own right, is quite correctly celebrated by a large, large audience of people. That's real. But right now, all of those people care so much more, man. They just want to see McGruber or McNugget or that motherfucker, whatever they call him. They want to see this guy fucking destroy him. That's influence, right? That's influence. The people who admire him, I mean, shit, didn't you want to try that whiskey? Mark, didn't you want to try that whiskey after you saw that? I mean, I did. And people are asking me on Twitter, you know, what'd you think, like, after you saw that press conference? I thought, God, I want to taste that whiskey. It's influence. Other people are like, I will never drink that whiskey in the world. It's a different kind of influence. He made you hate something inadvertently for his purposes, but you were deeply affected by it. And I believe there is a connection. Imagine if you can influence 1 million people, what if you focus that ability to influence on one guy? Jose Aldo or Eddie Alvarez. Doesn't that feel like something to you? You know? And trust me, I'm a science guy. I like to one, start with truth, and then I'll go and I'll meander into what happens when the Polynesian navigators were trying to figure out, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I'm doing here. And I'm sure that there is some science to this that I can look up, and I have been reading a number of interesting things about what it is to focus and what it is to be present in moments. These are real. Amy Cuddy has a book called Presence right now. I've listened to it or read it twice now, trying to get a sense for the truth of what that connection is to the moment, what that connection is to us. I mean, if you hate Conor McGregor, you cannot deny that you hate Conor McGregor. In fact, your actions in finding a way to tell somebody you don't know in another country on Twitter how much you hate him is inherent evidence of his influence on you, you know? And it doesn't have to be a compliment to him. You don't have to. You don't have to begrudgingly admit that he influenced you. It's okay. If his influence was to make you want to see him die in a cage by your Khabib's hand, that's okay. It doesn't make him great. In fact, according to you, it makes him one of the most terrible people that's ever lived. You just can't stand him. That's influence. And why does this matter, right? Why on earth would this matter? All that matters is punches and kicks, right? Not only, and this is something I often try to do, and some people appreciate it, some people just don't. But I'm trying to make sense of the world around us by using this beautiful art form. And whether you're talking about how and why somebody gets elected into office, how and why somebody, influence right now is more powerful than, and it's an extension of fame, but it's a much more powerful thing than fame. It's much more powerful than money. It's much more powerful than political power, unless it's political influence. But influence is everything. Influence is everywhere we are. How and why I bought this thing, I was influenced. Why you're listening to this podcast at all, somewhere along the line you were influenced by it. Why I'm drinking this particular flavor, whether I know it or not, I'm influenced. This Circus cup, my wife bought because she liked it because of the influence of the design this is our whole life. We're being influenced. And understanding it gives us some power. At least realizing it's real gives us some power. But not only that, as we apply it back to the fight. And now we go into a single press conference that we saw. And before I go into what we saw and what the power or lack of power of it, let me preface it with this. It doesn't have to matter in any way on fight night. There is no guarantee that it will or guarantee that it won't. There is no factual matter of how the effect of somebody making you mad or not mad or you being cold or none of those things by any means have to affect you on fight night. Okay? And that's just a fact. But influence is important. So I'm going to start with my one example. My one piece of information before we go deeper into the press conference and then deeper into the mentality of Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov, two men that I admire greatly, both of them. And when people ask me who's going to win, if you know me now, my answer is I have no idea, but I may have more idea as I gather information leading up to the fight. And then they say, who would you like to win? And currently, that's a really hard one when you admire two great, brilliant athletes and artists in this brilliant moment in time. It's a very hard one. But let's take simply this. Ali Aziz...
Ali Abdelaziz.
Ali Abdelaziz. I'm sorry. My apologies. As if you saw me earlier on Periscope, you'll know that when I get somebody's name wrong, it's deeply not disrespect. I have an issue with names that I connect to partying too much when I played in a band, followed by getting hit in the head too much. Somehow it's names. I talked about it on many podcasts, and so please accept my apology, Ali. But Ali was potentially, again, and Ali is somebody I've gotten to know over the last while, and you'll hear all types of controversial things about Ali, but the people who work with him, they love him. They love him. Frankie Edgar, Cody Garbrandt. These are some of the greatest athletes that I admire greatly. They love this man. That means something. That means something to me. So this is not in any way, I'm not piling on nothing. I'm simply offering this idea. Conor and Ali get into it for a moment there. Does that matter? Everything matters. Everything matters. Or it doesn't. When I say that, you could dismiss it, but it matters in the sense that if Ali is wound up, or anybody else, this is not pointed at Ali, he's somebody I've got to know and I appreciate greatly. And in fact, he has recommended me for an important commentary job in the past. And I appreciate him. But if Conor got Ali upset, Ali and I, who are now friends, we got mad at each other one time. And we're two very passionate, emotional guys. And we called each other names and threatened each other. He threatened me more because he's actually a much higher-level martial artist with more influence on more dangerous people than me. But nonetheless, we're good. But so he can be emotional as we all can, as I can. If Conor McGregor was able to get that man emotional in that moment, and let's say he was only emotional for 7 minutes, what that may mean is for 7 minutes, Ali's emotion could affect another coach, or could affect Khbib, or could affect the handler or the driver, or could affect what they're going to do at dinner, or could affect they cancel a training session, could make somebody else wound up. It is, we all affect each other. Again, this is a life lesson for me, and then I've said this before, and but if you walk out of your house right now, and you just go out and you have a good perspective in the world, and you see and you get in an Uber and you say, man, how was your day? You doing good? You know, so, and you ask them some questions and you share something with them. That guy will be different when the next person gets in his Uber. He will. This is what influence is. And he will be kind to him or her. And they may go and open a door for some. This spreads, right? You know this. You know this inherently, that what you put out into the world can spread. Happy, mad, scared, angry, appreciative. You know it. You know it without a shadow of a doubt. You've experienced it every day. So upsetting even a single member of that team has the potential. Doesn't mean it did. In fact, I suspect that Ali, with so much love and appreciation for his guys and their love for him, they just helped each other sort through it and it was nothing. But these are the little things that people are trying to accomplish in settings like this. Only experts, because no offense to our guy, Colby Covington, but he's not going to really do that. Has not yet developed, if he may at some point, but he has not yet developed the expertise to actually, do that. Incidentally, while we're using the metric of followers as a tool, Colby Covington, and no, Colby, don't come after me. 118,000 human beings. This guy has photos of himself with President Trump, and only 118,000 people are like, that's my guy. Never mind, that's my guy. Just wonder what he's up to. It's not a lot compared to 5 point whatever million people that Khabib has, and who knows how many people follow Conor, even just to hate him, some of them. Influence. It's real, right? So when you look at that, the goal, when someone is able to influence you to love him or hate him, and you don't know him, he's never spoken directly to you. He has spoken directly to me. And I've told this story before. It fucking shook me the day that he told me to my face how exactly he was going to knock out Jose Aldo. There's video of it. It's on pinned to my Twitter right now. It fucking freaked me out. I felt something. I was like, what the fuck is this? You know, you see that guy walk into a place, and I've known others like him. Not to that extent. Not to that completely mastered, present, influencing those around them extent. But that's real. To deny that's real is to put yourself in jeopardy. And that's what my guy Eddie did. There's a lot of footage of Eddie going, that's not real, man. It ain't real. Santa Claus isn't real. Fucking was real on fight night. Because it's the same thing. It is the influencing of other people. And that's when I write down, we're going to talk about Conor versus Khbib, the mental aspect. We could say he said this and it maybe made him think that, or is he in his head, or what's the mental, but what is it? What's at the root of it? It's fucking influence, right? The most powerful thing in the world right now, influence. And it's somebody who has, if you can open it up and use it there was some insane amount of people watching on YouTube when they were 25 minutes late. Whatever that number was. I forget what it was. It was hundreds of thousands. I'm looking at it like, all these people are just sitting around waiting for this?
And not even that. Beyond that, if you look at like the live chat, off the live stream, just the comments, the way that the new comments just keep on popping up, popping up.
The intensity
of
reaction.
Are engaged and that committed.
Yeah, it's wild. It's influence. And that influence is wide. You're in it. You've been influenced. We're all influenced, right? It's wild. It's wild. When we started talking about selling pay-per-views, we started talking about people who don't call themselves fight fans buying it. We talked about 8 or 10 million people, probably more. If there's 2 million sold and it's three people on an average household, and it's probably 4 as the average, then you add people in bars and they'll sell out probably arenas in fucking Ireland where people just be in there to be together. Then the venue, what do we get? Theaters, 15 million, 20 million, all pausing to see this. That's not something special. Doesn't mean I'm not taking a side. I'm not a nut hugger. Not yet. If I'm going to nut hug, it'll be next week. Once I've taken it in and seen what I believe is happening, right or wrong, just a person focusing my knowledge and experience as best I can. But I'm just saying that's real. That's undeniable. And if it's not a big jump to say, if you have the ability to influence wide, and let's say, 15 million watch it, well, however many million want to know who won and didn't watch it but are asking about it and talking about it. And do you know how many fucking people, when I have said anything about him, and I have the same story from Chael, and I've got the same story from Joe, and I've got the same story from everybody. The reaction of people, even to fringe characters like me. It's wild, man. It's fucking wild. It's wild. So that ability to influence that widely, what if you just fucking focus it? Are you ready to tell me that's not what's going on? Are you ready to tell me that that's not what Poirier experienced, that's not what Aldo experienced, and that's not what Eddie Alvarez experienced? The one I would just fucking love this. I don't know if it'll ever happen. Not ruling it out. We've grown a lot, and a lot of people seem to appreciate our work. I'd like to sit down with Nate Diaz with an honest talk, and many of these guys it's a gift to even be able to say this out loud. Many of them have given me different conversations than they give usually. You might see it if you watch the chat with BJ Penn. Definitely chat with Eddie Alvarez. Jorge, day after he fought.
Even Cormier.
They give me something different. It's a great joy in my life and a great source of pride. So I know at least what some have told me is whether I fought or how I've dedicated myself to the way I study martial arts, whatever it is. I'm not here to not how to hug myself. Is that a thing? But they have. And if I could sit down with Nate in such an environment where he was like, I trust this guy. He's just one of us doing his best. Couldn't fight like us, but he wants to live like us. And ask him, these aren't black and white and cut and dried things. It didn't work at 100% versus Eddie and 0% versus Nate. Dustin Poirier, it might have been, hey, it was weirder than I've experienced, but I was still there. I wasn't completely in there. And Nate, I'd like him to, if he would be willing or able, I'd like him to go, fuck yeah, he threw me a bit. Or there were moments. Or it was weird in there at times. Or I had questions. Or I wasn't sure. Or it was a very, because he's like, the guy kind of hit hard. It wasn't that great. And these are important things to discuss at the stage of his career. And for purposes other than, his job isn't to tell us the truth. His job is to use discussion for the purposes of his war and his growth and his accomplishment, and I respect that. But if he just was like, yeah, man, that guy fucking got to me, when I'm normally, people can get to me at a 1 or a 2 out of 10, that guy got to me at a 4.5. But fuck him, I put it down. That's what I'd like to know, is, because it ain't, and this, I guess, is what I'm looking for, is to get across, is people like, is he in his head? Who's in whose head? This isn't a yes or no. It's not a binary. It's not a 1 or a 0. It's not a, yeah, you're fucked, or there's nothing happening here. Although there are times, it's a scale. It's a spectrum, right? I mean, I feel like this conversation is natural. It's rooted in my adult lifetime of experience caring about this stuff. It's rooted in conversations I've had. It's rooted in my experiences. It's rooted in things that the Eddie Alvarez's of the world have given me, or the Jorge Masvidal's have given me. It's rooted in me being in the gym and watching these rounds with a different eye, with the ability to draw more from the moments that's what I'm trying to pass on to you. I'm hoping that you don't just say, well, I disagree, that you actually pause and go, well, it's possible that somebody with, thousands or tens of thousands or, whatever, hours of something could extract more from seeing the same thing as me. And the reason I bring that up is I was looking at something online and somebody was saying, well, we're looking at the same thing, but I disagree. It's like, I get it, and that's totally fair. But isn't it possible that somebody with expertise could extract more information, valuable information, not right or wrong, not more right, just more information from that? And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to give to you or offer to you the idea that this is all just, at its root, it's a type of influence. And whether or not, and there are many ingredients to it, the verbal, the content of the verbal, the tone, the nonverbal, physical actions. But for this one, and, again, I'm not trying to measure this or say who wins it or lost it. I'm simply looking at it. One thing I think we can agree on is McGregor tried to make serious attempts to undermine Khbib. There are 2 jobs that he's trying to do at those press conferences. One is sell the fight to make money and get people engaged and have them responding and buzzing, and he does that every time. And the second one is an attempt to create some type of doubt or emotion in you that will be of some value to him. And in this case, his attempts to do it, and I talked about this at the airport. I took that clip down because the sound wasn't very good, and although I felt it was still of value to share, even with bad sound. I took this clip down. But I was looking at it, and the most important thing, whether it worked or not, I'm not making a value judgment on that. I'm trying to offer you the ways to look at it, or ways to discuss it, or ways to consider it, not tell you what happened. This guy did this and this guy won that. I don't think that's of any value to you, and that you can get that anywhere. Somebody will tell you who is going to win the fight, or somebody will tell you who's better at this or better at that. All of these are opinions. I don't want to give you opinions anymore. Who cares about my opinion? I want to offer you something that maybe you can find something different. But in this case, analytically speaking, whether it worked or didn't, where McGregor went was to the places that are off limits. And I use that in quotations. They're off limits. They are unsportsmanlike, or they are, unreasonable, or what are some other words that we can use to describe, that people use to say when you go overboard, out of bounds, all of the McGregor used things, went to places that we don't go.
Cross the line.
Cross the line. That's a good one. I think that's the one I was looking for. Cross the line. Well, let's wander out into the forest and just fucking show me the line. Doesn't exist. Let's wander out in the forest and find a bucket of sportsmanship. Doesn't exist. These are human constructs. We just came up with them. And what was sport, because I commentate bare knuckle boxing. If you're listening on podcast, I'm holding my hands up in that old school boxing way right now. What is considered unsportsmanship or non-sporting or across the line in that world is very different from boxing, which is very different from Olympic judo, which is very different. These are all human constructs. They're agreements, unwritten, in most cases, unspoken agreements that we make. And I'll tell you, on the other side of the line, over the limit, cross the line, that's where all the good shit is. Because the things on the side of the line, the things on this side of what is sportsmanship, we've all experienced. It doesn't bother us anymore. If somebody, says your mother is, what do people say about someone's mother? They're like overweight.
Yeah, your mom's fat.
Whatever. Yeah, Mark, your mom's fat. I mean, that you can tell that's ridiculous. Your mom is not fat, and even if she were, who cares what I think? Pointless. You're a dick. You can't fight. Like, to keep it on the side of what we've sort of unspoken, agreed upon, may or may not be okay, it doesn't get you anywhere. You don't have any impact with that. Now, there's many reasons you could choose to not go there. And in my small and ultra-limited competitive career, I never went to any of those places because I cherished the purity of the contest. That was just my feeling. But when I played in a rock band, for the purposes of making, getting attention, I said shit about other bands that had never been said, especially not in Canada. And I'll tell you also, it wasn't easy for anybody. And I'm since apologized as an adult that I went to those places for the purposes of creating this. And this is in the early 2000s.
SoCan's a small industry.
Yeah. Canadian music is a very small industry. But it propelled us. It had value for me. But it was hard. Other people could dismiss it sometimes. And not all did. Some were like, fuck you, Robin Black. Why'd you say that about my band on television? I said it because it would be seen many times. It would be repeated over and over and used at the year end. Look how funny it was. Robin Black was wearing makeup and he said this about a band from Vancouver. Or Matthew Good, who's a brilliant musician. or Nickelback. Although Nickelback was pretty low-hanging fruit. And ultimately, why did people hate Nickelback? Because they're fucking huge. Mm-hmm. Right? Because they're massive and they're successful. And there's an element of that to why some people hate McGregor. Not all of them. There's lots of reasons to hate McGregor. But there's a Nickelback element to Conor McGregor as well. And but it was hard. Nickelback didn't give a shit. They had $100 million. But it was hard because people would say shit back to me. You pay a price for that. But once you get to a point where McGregor is, the ultra powerful, they don't pay the kind of prices we do. If I said something now, and at that time, I had been a martial artist with some confidence, and most people who played in bands were pretty, a lot of pussies kicking around in bands. So I wasn't concerned they'd smash my face in, but I at least had to be aware that that was a possibility. McGregor doesn't have to concern himself with that. There's going to be security. There's going to be contracts signed. There's going to be things, although, and somebody responded to this to me with this on Twitter before I took down that clip with the ruined sound, which I guess they could hear well enough. Many people could, but many couldn't. They said, even at the highest level, when you cross some of these lines, you can get assassinated. You can get shot. You can have somebody attack your family. And these things are true. These are the things you're playing with. When you go to those places, the dark places, as, to quote a George St. Pierre thing, not that George goes to, George is not a dark place kind of guy, although everybody in their own mind has their challenges. But when you start talking about somebody's father, proud man's father, you start talking about their allegiance to their country, their allegiance to their people, you start using McGregor literally, and people corrected me on this quite enthusiastically. I said, Muslims don't believe in Jesus. They do, that he was a prophet. What I meant was they don't believe that he is the Lord and Savior above, which McGregor, you will notice, was raised a Catholic, but is an atheist, and I think we know that. Once you get into, I have no problem with the gods. Gods recognize gods, and I accept all the gods. And these are concepts of a modern. Plus, the way he views self, and there's a lot of evidence that this man is an atheist. But even if you don't subscribe to that, he has never talked about Jesus Christ above being the key to his fights. He believes hard work is. These are the things, these are his messages that he sends. Hard work, drive, commitment to success, self-improvement. It is about, it's humanist. He comes off as a humanist, someone who believes that it is at the root of who you are that you control those things. And in this one, with a man who is a committed and true Muslim, he's talking about Jesus Christ above. He's bringing alcohol. He knows full well this man doesn't drink alcohol. He's bringing that. Do you know what I mean? These are boundaries.
Mispronouncing Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, he's purposefully mispronouncing. Yeah,
it.
He is. Then he's taking things that have so many generations of conflict through different parts of the history of this powerful country that somebody's proud to be a part of. And he's going there. This is all art of war shit. This is all art of war shit. You can get it. Sun Tzu, what am I, again?
Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu, sorry. It's been a name day for me. Fuck. It's fatigue, too. I'm pushing it pretty hard. Sun Tzu, this is art of war. Pick up art of war. Actually, maybe if all you get out of these conversations is pick that book up and read it, even the point form, concepts of it, it's all very applicable, because whether you ever are going to be in a war or it'll be a nature of how you're trying to sell your app and somebody else is trying to take your audience, these are applicable rules to life. So this is the game. So you see it on a wide range, making some hate him, some love him. 10 million will view it, maybe more. If 2 million buy it, you know more than 10 million are watching it. Plus, I believe you don't even pay per view in Russia or Brazil or England, right? Yeah. So 2 million bought, and 4 million there, and then 4 million. 4 people on each is 8. That's 12 million bars. I mean, maybe it's 20 million. I don't fucking know. But there's the wide. Then there's the focused, studied, researched, strategized, planned, trying to play that game. And then on the night, there's the physical, there's the nonverbal, there is your own mind, the presence, what you're capable of getting from yourself. An attempt. This is all the shit. And if you're looking for me to tell you whether or not McGregor, how much he affected Khbib, I don't know. Neither do you. I'll tell you this much. If you look up the word heuristic, we often try, as a human behavior, we try to take something, and if it's a very complicated question, what we do is we apply a heuristic. Complicated question is, did Conor McGregor's, games of influence and strategies and art of war applied concepts, how much did it affect Khbib? You know why that's a complex question? Because nobody fucking knows the answer to that. You get the greatest body language expert, and you bring him in with the greatest, history of mental warfare expert, and I'll come in with them with whatever experience I have. We'll bring in a psychologist, and we'll bring in somebody who is a historian of Dagestani and Chechen politics, and we'll bring all those people in. You'll sit them down, and they'll tell you, I don't know how much you fucking affected them. So we don't know. But we apply a heuristic. The question, how much did he affect them? Complex question. The heuristic is a replacement with an easy question. And the easy question we'll take in all these things is, who do you like more? And if you like Conor, you say, he fucking got up in his head. And if you like Khbib, you say he didn't affect him. Look. And you'll even use the same evidence through it. You'll take a shot of Khbib, I'm prepared for this. It doesn't bother me. And if you're Conor's guy, you'll take that one moment where he's like, what are you talking about? And you'll use those as the only moments, and your heuristic will be, who am I cheering for? Yeah, and you'll use that to replace
confirmation bias. We see what we want to see.
We see what we want to see. And you apply a heuristic. The same people will say, who do you think, based on all of the information of skills, experience, the ability to perform on the night, outside things you don't know, diet, exercise, health, injuries, all of this you don't know, who do you think will win the fight? Your only true answer is, if you have any knowledge, is I have no idea. But the heuristic is, who are you cheering for? And when people say, who's your pick, they're using the heuristic. Who are you cheering for? And then you say who you're cheering for, and then you take whatever bits of information would support that. And that's what you do. And a lot of that is driven by the influence of that guy and Khbib. And, if you are hoping that Eddie Alvarez fights the winner, or you're hoping somebody, and Dana, and fucking Chael, and Joe Rogan, and whatever. And Brendan, these are all the things. They all influence you, and then you make a pick based on who you'd like to win, and then you support it with the evidence you have. And you've been affected. You've been influenced, and that's. I apologize if I can't tell you, but I'm being honest with you. And I don't think other people are lying to you when they tell you 100% Conor got in his head, or no way he didn't. I don't think they're lying to you. I think they're giving you the best answer they can. It's just, it's made up. It's an opinion. It's an opinion with very limited information. So that will wrap up the deep dive into, at least, and maybe it's not a deep dive. In fact, maybe it's a surface dip into it. And it's a dip. Took a little dip into what's going on there. And I hope you found it interesting. Now we'll dig into some aspects of the fight itself. Then we will dig into intangibles. And, of course, this mental stuff connects to the intangibles. And then maybe we'll take a couple questions. So the fight itself. Conor McGregor is fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov. And there are some very specific narratives. So maybe let's start there. And there are things that we believe to be true, or we all have heard, and in many cases, people like, everybody knows this, or it's obvious that, but these things are sometimes not as obvious as we think. So let me, Mark, can you hand me another one of those whiteboards? They're just right there. And we're just going to scroll down what a few of those are. Here it comes. Got a little trusty pen. So what are some of the narratives? Conor striking. Khabib ground. I'm just taking the first ones that come to mind.
Conor and Khabib cardio.
Yeah. Cardio, question mark. Khabib gets hit too much. That's one people gets hit too much. Conor is a quitter. I've heard that one. Mm-hmm. Conor can quit. Okay. That's a good start. So we take a look at some of the aspects, the narratives, the beliefs, the things that we may be sure of. Conor is a unstoppable striker with a neutron star exploding left hand that murders people. He's got insane power, and if you stand up with him, he will knock you unconscious. Second one, Khbib on the ground is unstoppable. He is dominant. He is destructive. He little brothers you, and if you go to the ground with Khbib, you're dead. Questions about who fatigues, when, and how. There's a belief that Khbib gets hit too much, and that Conor can or would quit. Now, I'm going to quickly jump ahead to these two and throw this thought out there. And I know at times people resist this idea, but the past does not dictate the future. I'm sorry. I know it's sometimes all we have. It's like this guy knocked out everybody. And actually that'll apply to Khbib striking, Conor striking Khbib ground. Actually, it applies to all of these. This is a fundamental flaw that sometimes we have. And when we sit there and something is entirely different on Monday and we respond to a powerful answer. This guy's got a crazy chin, he never gets knocked out. And he gets knocked out and we go, I guess his chin is gone. Or this guy's got power, when he hits you, you go to sleep. Tonight it doesn't. Oh, I guess he lost his power. Like, the past doesn't dictate the future. We see that all the time. However, we have to use something, right? Like, we have to start somewhere. What the past does is it starts somewhere. It is the available information that we have. I guess better what I'm trying to say is it is not the be-all, end-all. It is not. Because somebody knocked out everybody they ever hit, and then one day they didn't. And it isn't because they lost their power. It was a different day and under different circumstances. Conor not knocking out Nate Diaz, for example. So let's go back to Conor striking. I feel fairly confident that I have studied Conor McGregor's game, left hand in particular, more than anybody walking planet Earth. I feel pretty confident about that. Somebody could send me a message, and say, actually, I've been analyzing martial arts for this purpose in this way, and in fact, I've done more, and I would not try to defend that. I just believe, based on what I've seen and the unholy and probably unhealthy amount that I've done that, there are very few people who've looked at it deeper. And it is fascinating to me. There are many fascinating aspects to it, to me, but the biggest one, and this is in some amount of controversy, and when I discuss it, and it conflicts with the beliefs of people I respect deeply, I hope that I can be a good example, and so can they, and in any situation like this, that we can be good examples of how well you can have differing opinions and how important differing opinions are to growing our understanding of things. I really hope that's so. And there's a lot of this happening in the world right now. It, I think, is a reaction to, whether it's NFL or UFC on Fox or, a golf show or CNN or Fox or MSNBC or anything. That world in which we take somebody and they both disagree and then they yell at each other and then that's it. And then people go on the internet and they choose a side and they yell at each other. There's actually a huge movement towards sit down things. Dr. Jordan Peterson will sit down with it's been a bad day for names for me. Some other popular web-based philosopher, and together they will have a debate or disagreement. They'll respect each other deeply. They'll appreciate each other, and then together they will find new areas. They won't just...
I think you're referring to Sam Harris?
Sam Harris, that's one, yeah. Yeah. Or even when Joe Rogan... And I know a lot of you watch Joe. Fuck, right? Mark, is that the podcast you watch most? Yeah. There are many podcasts.
Yeah, there's many, but yeah.
And listen to. But I mean, when Joe sits down with somebody, he's not just trying to hold on to what he believes already or fight it or try to convince the other one. There's a whole world now and it's really healthy. And it makes your life a lot better. And you learn a lot more stuff. And you stop fighting with people. But so I'm hoping when I disagree about Conor striking in this particular way, that that it's valuable. And when I do it, I hope that the people I disagree with respect that I've spent a lot of time studying, as they have, in different ways. But a strong one for me is the idea, and I think this is of value for our understanding of Conor McGregor's punch, but also of ourselves and of fighting in general as people who love watching it. But when people say Conor McGregor has God-given power, I disagree strongly. I disagree very strongly for many reasons. But we start with, and so does he, incidentally. So, and I'm not disagreeing because he does, or because John Kavanagh does, and I'm not disagreeing to disagree with people who say he does, and very educated people from the world of boxing and all types of athletic endeavors will have this strong opinion, and it should be respected, that power is God-given. But I think all of the scientific evidence says that it is not. Conor believes it is not. John Kavanagh believes it is not. Dr. Stu McGill, one of the world's foremost experts in how the nervous system expresses neurology for the purpose of creating that powerful whip, he says it is not. In fact,
it was actually in his sit-down, he explained that fighters like Nate and Nick Diaz generate more power because that flicking motion.
Dr. Stu, with us?
Yeah.
You can go back and look at that.
Punches,
that's because 6 or 8 months ago.
It's because of that flicking motion.
So that his research has found that the key is what is called in science a double pulse neurology, where the body pulses and then relaxes and then pulses again to tension. And you ignite to throw the shot. You go into a state of relaxation. I talked to Joe about this on his podcast, and it's a little breakdown I did of Joe kicking, which really, in that 1 minute, I try to look at it. It is a pulse, a fully relaxed state of relaxation, and then a lit body at the end. And I'm right-handed. Bing. And Anderson Silva, he researched, he talked about Nate and Nick Diaz, how, and side note, Bruce Lee actually was something special, JL, my friend, and others. But when you look at how a 125-pound man was able to create this force, this is what it is. It's neurological. It's trained. Now, when you go back enough levels, there, of course, is a genetic component. And this is where people mistakenly say power is God-given. Because, I have made this error to say, I've said it isn't a fast twitch muscle fiber. It is a fast twitch neurology. What I meant to say is it isn't only a fast twitch muscle fiber. Fast twitch muscle fibers do exist, but a sprinter isn't a sprinter because of the fibers in his leg. That is a tiny ingredient in the chain of the body's ability to light itself up. In a tiny part of the chain is the fiber, but it is a fast twitch neurology. So in other words, the fibers are part of a chain of how your nervous system, your spine, all of it works, from the senses to the body to pulse, relax, pulse. This is all trained. It's all developed. Now, the argument for the God-given nature of this type of ability to generate power, and I'm careful to say that because nobody has power, because power is not something you have. Power is something you create. Nobody has power. And certainly nobody has knockout power in both hands. These hands have zero power. They're just hands. Right? That's just a way to say things. It's not real. Nobody has power. Who has the most power? Joe Rogan or Francis Ngannou? Well, first of all, neither one, because neither has power. Who creates more power in the moment? Well, they said Joe Rogan's turning kick created more power than Francis's punch. Is that right? I think so. Or it got into the same world anyways.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure.
Does that mean Joe is more powerful? No, the technique. The ability, does Joe, what he is more powerful than what Francis Ngannou is? Is Bruce Lee more powerful than, Ben Saunders or whatever connection? You can't compare it that way. The technique creates the power. And yes, there are genetic components, and that's where God-given versus, Conor's way to say it is it's just all he is obsessed and trains hard. And it's hard to argue, but when that guy when he walked up to a gym one day and he didn't know where to stand and he didn't know how to punch, did he punch like he does today? No. Why not? Because you had to teach him how to punch. You had to train him. You had to build the technique. You had to build his body or to connect his nervous system. Okay, then it's not God-given. Do some people have genetic advantages that will make, and talk to Fernand Lopez about this, who is Francis Ngannou's coach. I just saw Coach Fernand last weekend. I apologize we didn't get to hang out after. His fighter, Cyril Gane, won by knockout. He's the TKO heavyweight champion. Congratulations to Coach Fernand Lopez and to Cyril Gane and the rest of his team. He had another fighter win on the night as well. But Francis Ngannou, he talked about his maximum achievable level was or is higher than other athletes he'd ever seen, and he was a special athlete, there's no question, but he still had to learn the technique. He still had to improve the technique. Conor McGregor, with less training and less commitment, doesn't hit as hard, can't be as relaxed, can't generate the force. If he didn't study taekwondo and karate and kickboxing and boxing and put it all together, this doesn't exist. It isn't God-given. He isn't just sitting there walking around the world with the ability to perfectly knock out people with a left hand. And it's important that we know that. It's important that we know that for a lot of reasons. But when you're sitting there, if this anywhere, and it's worth looking at yourself, if anywhere in there you're wondering if you're somewhere in you dislike this guy because of his success, and I know when we hear those things, we deny it, but maybe it's there. Just at least consider it might be there. If it is, there's a relief in saying he had something I never had. There's a relief instead of saying, because if you admit that hard work and drive and commitment and sacrifice and a unstoppable desire to continue to evolve and be great, if you admit that is at the very root of the man's success, then you have to admit wherever you are in life, you have some control over that. And so therefore, if you're unhappy, that's on you to some degree. Of course, we all have challenges. We all started at different points along the line. If you were born in sick or weak or with extra challenges for your family or there's a million challenges, a million. But wherever you started, it is within your power to go beyond it and find your ultimate potential. And if you say that Conor McGregor was born with this God-given power, you take away not only what he has earned, and you can do that if you hate him, by all means, but you take away your ability to learn from it and to be inspired by it and to look at it and say, what am I capable of with insanely hard work and commitment to something I love? And not to go too far down this road, but it starts by finding the thing that you love, because you're not going to work your fucking ass off for something you don't love. Mark, how was working in the bank?
Yeah, terrible.
Right? Mark worked in the bank. How hard could you work? You can't. You have to find the thing you love. Conor McGregor loved this. And he probably loves whiskey now, too. Whiskey's pretty good. It's what he loved. And so he committed to it. He got better and better and better. And, I've seen others. And Doo Ho Choi is not Conor McGregor. I don't know if he ever will be. But his right hand, I've studied these things. When I watched him train it, I was watching and certain things that Anthony Pettis threw when I saw him in the gym years ago. I'm watching this smooth creation in the ability to express without being in your own way. And that's where this force and power is created. Doo Ho Choi's right hand, man, when you see it, when I see it, when I was in South Korea in a gym with him, there were so many similarities to Conor's left hand. Which one was born with it? Oh, they both were? No, neither was. Did they have the ability to reach a higher potential than I might have? If I had done what they had done as hard as they had done it, could I have been the legacy 2-division champion? Could I have been the TKO champion? Could I have, proper 6 whiskey? Like, you may not be able, we can't all be the champion of the world, but your potential is achieved through hard work. And that's what Conor's left hand is. And that's what Conor's ability to play and manipulate range and distance. It's a sensitivity. And, coincidentally, when I was in Korea, I didn't connect these two things. They were training that too. That part of the game that was happening in that part of the world. When I saw, and separate, I went to a different gym and watched the Korean Zombie training with his team and his young fighters. They were dealing with connecting the distance between their opponents before they even learned to punch and kick. And Bruce Lee did this by studying fencing. These are specializations within the game. And that takes us to Khabib's ground game. Remember that I left off with Conor at distance and the ability to manipulate the space between you and fencing, because we go to Khbib on the ground. And is he, we had other questions from people, and is he as good? Why is he so good? I think with Khbib, a big difference is when you saw, if you haven't already seen it, it's on my Instagram, and it's been on dozens of Instagrams just today. Khabib's fighting a bear. How old was he, did they say? 8?
I think he was 8 or 9 years old, something like that.
You look and there's a kid fighting a bear. And you see that kid fighting that bear. And, about 1 out of 20 comments is about the cruelty of the bear. And before I go on, my only comment to that would be, this is 20 years ago in a foreign land, and it's not really fair to judge how they lived and what they faced and the environment that they were in and the beliefs that they had. And, we're where we are in 2018. It's hard to go back and judge these things. People's, even their own knowledge of things and what they'd been exposed to and the beliefs that they were brought up with and stuff. It's hard to just, we don't need to judge people all the time. But you see Khabib wrestling a bear. You do. Young man wrestling a bear in an environment where that was quite normal to them. So that's all I'm saying there. Nobody said, let's harm another animal. They did what was normal to them at the time. And so you watch that kid wrestle that fucking bear, I'm telling you, that kid can wrestle. Now, the bear can wrestle too, which is very impressive and interesting. And before I move on to modern day, a lot of people ask me, how'd that bear learn to wrestle so well? Because you see his knee tap and high under. And I wanted to split. I didn't have that technical ability to split screen it with George at the time. I could do it now. Maybe I will for my YouTube channel. But George and that bear, there are angles. It's like George spent a lifetime developing that takedown. Many others do it, but George used it a lot. And they're like, how'd that bear learn that? A bear didn't really learn that. A bear, his instincts, understanding where his body is and understanding how to use leverage and understanding his own appendages and their value, that gets it trained into them naturally very young. You watch cats play and fight and you see cats flipping and how the cat learned that? They just played. They played and learned they made connections to their body. Nobody had that bear drill that technique. But humans, we need to drill it. Or at least the advantage of being young and doing it is you play too. And then you are aware of where your body is. You understand the connection between your fingers and your toes and how they connect and how you don't have to think to move. There's a physical awareness, a kinesthetic awareness, just an awareness of where you are and connection to yourself and other things. Then we get you to drill. And you look at that, you have no doubt that Khabib's a fucking dominant monster of a wrestler. He was 9 years old there. How old is he now? What is he, 27? Look it up really quickly. And the answer to why I don't know that is because it's impossible to know everything, especially when you're studying martial arts from around the world, from unconnected shows with hundreds of other athletes. It's just so impossible. But these are the things I'll need to know next week because I'm covering it all week. So it's good to have now. Khbib is 30. So if he was 9 or 8, it's 22 years ago. 22 years ago, look how that kid wrestled. Of course you understand that this is training. This is commitment. This is drive. This is repetition. This is, deliberate practice. That's what that is. And of course he's a genius at it. And of course he's dominant. When you look at the technical nature of it, and there's footage of him showing other people, he's not afraid. He's not afraid for you to know what he does. In fact, they all know what he does. Edson Barbosa went into that. Him and his coaches knew exactly what Khbib does. You know? Now, Daryl Horcher, he didn't have a lot of time to prepare. Neither did Al Iaquinta, for that matter. But so we haven't actually seen, you know, the next generations of understanding what he does. We also haven't seen what Khbib will do if you do the right thing in those moments. So, you know, don't get too excited about that. But Michael Johnson knew what to expect, couldn't stop it. Daryl Horcher, well, you know, it was too short a time for him. Edson Barbosa, Rafael dos Anjos, they knew what he was doing. He doesn't care. That's the beauty of what Khbib does. He's happy for you to look at it. He's not lying or tricking you. He's just so good, right? The issue between, as we connected, and I don't think this is news to anyone, certainly nobody watching my YouTube channel or listening to my podcast, is the Conor striking that we discussed, his ability to generate force, and it's the way he moves and the way he slides out with his uppercut and the way he moves his head and he draws you in, and Khabib's dominant ground game. There's a thing that has to happen to decide which of those things is in play. And we think of it as a thing. And there are flaws in our connecting of those two things. I don't know how well this looks, and Mark just stepped outside for a second. But if this is Conor striking, and this is Khbib on the ground, there's a big space in between, and that space, of course, starts with them some distance from each other. Here's Mark coming back in. I'm going to ask him. Hey, Mark, can you how's this look in the monitor? Can you see this? This is Conor on the ground. This is Khbib, or Conor standing. This is Khbib on the ground. There's a long space in between that. Can you hand me another one of those boards? I'm going to try to do this here. So there's a long space in between, and we think of that space. Here's our own flaws, and the reason we identify these flaws, and usually we have to identify them first, and they're very frustrating, and they create a lot of tension, and that tension's good. You've watched me, if you've watched my podcast or listened to it, you've seen me go through that tension. I'm like, this doesn't work. The way we're describing this is just no good. That tension forces you to look deeper. That tension forces you to find, it's a plateau. And so Conor's striking, and Khbib is dominating on the ground, and we say, well, it depends who has better wrestling. And we draw that in the middle of this. We take this space, and we say, this is Conor on the feet, this is Khbib on the ground, and who has better wrestling? We say that. And once upon a time, that was the case. Because soon as somebody, back in the old days, as soon as somebody grabbed somebody, we had to wrestle. But now, you know, we've understood a little bit. The next level of understanding was that there are two things in between at first. So it was Conor on the feet and Khbib on the mat. And then this was wrestling, and this was closing the distance, right? Or we called it later, the new thing, probably 5 years ago now. I remember doing the first breakdown of McGregor going into something big. Maybe pre-Mendez. I think he was fighting...
I think it might have been Poirier.
Yeah, maybe Poirier.
Or Seaver.
Yeah, no, I was using footage from Seaver, and I talked about it being about distance management. Then he used the flim flam to create distance management, and then he had a Celtic cross.
Would have been Mendez then.
Yeah, going into Mendez, but Mendez was a last-minute replacement. Oh, for Aldo. And I had I've never seen distance management discussed much at that point, or ranges for that matter. We talked about striking and grappling, and somehow back in the day, and I'm not, let's go back and watch fights pre that period. Even the best commentators in the world, they would have discussed things a certain way based on what the audience could handle. And it'd be like, wow, they're striking. Okay, now they're wrestling. Let's see who's got how his takedown defense is, as if, you know, wrestling had to happen. Once we added the concept of you know, and I'm not saying I added it. McGregor was doing it, and then Holly Holm and Stephen Thompson. And there was a whole thing happening in the world with people doing it. Stephen Thompson versus Johnny Hendricks is a perfect example. Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. there became this thing where, and what it basically means is, I'm just not going to let you get me. And here, the reason I asked Mark to give me this was, ultimately, this circle will be Khabib on the ground. This circle will be Khabib completing enough of a takedown to get you on the ground. This circle will be Khabib getting a dominant control position from standing. This one will be getting enough of a grip, and this one will be closing the distance. So there are many steps. First, you must close the distance successfully. If you do that, sorry, I don't have this up. If you close the distance successfully, then you need to get a good hold somewhere. Now, that good hold might be as good, and even this you can put a space in between, but let's just say that hold is, we've wrapped up some type of leg, single. Back in the day, we had singles or doubles. Then later, we had body lock. Now, an arm drag, a connection, a collar tie. But this is something where I've held you. This is something where I have some type of control. From there, this is to something that would be the beginning of a takedown. I'm grabbing you. I've gotten you close to off your feet. This is a battle to get you to accept and or surrender the position. Because you'll notice, so let's put it here. I'm going to put this down for a second while we explain. Accept or surrender the position. Because what you see now is I've got single, double, body lock, whatever. I dump you, and you're up on a post, or you're partly up, or you're on all fours, or you're getting up, and you never, ever said, okay, I'm in all fours, or okay, I'm in half guard. And this is a big one today. And this is a big one according to the thinking of what your coach wants you to do, is you don't surrender the position. And then this one is, okay, you've accepted that I am, or the position has been taken. That's how Khabib does it. He takes it and rides the hip, rides the wrist, takes a back, sort of a half guard from the back, takes over, under. This is Khabib owning your position. So before he owns your position, he had to battle to make you either accept that give up or dominate it. From this one, he had to be in the process of taking you down. To do that, he had to get a hold of you. And to do that, he had to close the distance. Okay? That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
All of those steps are necessary. And there are more than those, trust me. At any part in between any one of those steps, you could create one. Well, there's a battle for grip. We could say, well, it's a grip battle or a battle to take control. But we'll just say that. Close the distance, get some type of actual grip, move that grip into a process of taking you down or some amount of wrestling. Some people will say chain wrestling. Maybe we'll call that chain wrestling.
That's usually the point where the body gets manipulated, it gets shifted over, then dumped to the ground.
Yeah, in some part, this is what we used to call the takedown. This barely existed once upon a time, so bear with me. Somebody would grab my hips, my single or my double, and I would get taken down, and then I would play guard. This one became a mindset of people where, and this is where our flaws come in again, where we'll be like, okay, shot a takedown, great takedown defense. That's what we would call takedown defense. But all of this is a takedown. And their takedowns, like other things we've discussed today, are not a yes or a no. They're not a 1 or a 0. They're not binary. This is just fucking fighting. This is fighting. Closing the distance, getting a grip, initiating some type of attack to take you from your feet, then countering all of your attempts to not surrender it. This is just the psychological and the philosophical unwillingness to give up or accept the position. And whether you force me to accept it, and Khabib will do both, or you will just, what's the word I'm looking for? You will just take it. Doesn't matter what you think.
Submit to it.
Yeah. He will make you give it up, or even though you don't, he will take you. And this is where he takes his positions. That right there. That's where Khabib owns the fight. Do you understand? The fight, it isn't that Khabib's grab or takedown is fucking wrestling's unreal. When you resist, when you do the things that people these days do, which is say, I won't give it up, I won't give up a half guard, I won't give up a guard, you initiate a process. And this is the process in which Khabib will dominate you. In this process, your desire to not give it up. And then from there, he takes his position. And this is where Khabib smashes you. But this is where everything happens. And in that position, so I don't need this anymore, but I'm going to keep it here so that I can keep reminding of. And again, these are not the steps at all. And in fact, I'd prefer that we could get to a point where we wouldn't have to even break it into segments, because it isn't like all I'm doing here is something I don't like to do. It's wrestling, it's striking, it's wrestling, it's takedowns. And it's like, well, no, it's kicking at distance, then punching at distance, then elbowing distance, and then initiating a grab. And then the segmentation of it is a plateau of our understanding. It prevents us from understanding the pure freedom that is fighting itself. But currently, best I can do. I'm really sorry. I know I can do better. I know if you give me time, and I know if I go face to face with these frustrations longer and these tensions of not being able to tell the truth of what we're seeing, eventually I'll crack the code and find the way to make it get across, because it matters to me. I swear to you, I've never just wanted to say he's a better wrestler, he's a better striker, this guy's got knockout power in both hands. I never wanted my turn doing that. I wanted to study it, understand it in such a way that I could find verbiage for it. So anyways, the best I can do right now.
I do have a question about that. So in that second last portion, what can Conor do to avoid getting...
Okay, so that's exactly where we're going. That's why I put a heavy on it. So it is your resistance that gives him his dominant positions. Because what do you do? What does everybody do? They try to go to all fours. They try to get away. They try to stand up. They try to break the hold. And Khabib moves from all of your reactions. So once upon a time, again, we'll back up a bit. 8 or 10 years ago, we gave this up. I got my double leg. I'm being taken down. Now I fight in guard and try to submit him. In the years since, we found an answer, and that was just keep the mindset of don't accept it, get back to your feet, go to the post, go to 4 points, give up your back briefly, get one hip against the fence, widen your stance, get your feet under you, get back to your feet. That's what we all did. It's happened in every gym. It's what we've been doing, and that's the part that Khabib owns you. So there are many options. I'll tell you what Tony's option was. I'll tell you what Tony's belief was. Tony's belief was don't fight it. He's going to, and you saw him work that, Edson Barbosa, and I've shown it in clips before, and I think it's maybe in my Tony versus Khabib breakdown that if you Google it, it's there. The fight never happened. I broke that fight down a lot, and that one probably took 50 hours of just pulling video. Never mind fucking building the thing. But, hey, it was still worth it. I learned a lot. But when Tony was getting taken down, he said, fuck it, I'm not going to do this part. I'm going to use your entry rather than do the reaction that we all train for. Khabib gets a hold of me. I fucking try to get out, I underhook, or I post up, whatever's happening. Tony's like, no. In that moment, I get guard. And you see lots of it. And I think I used it in that breakdown and pretty sure I did, where mid-takedown, it's just get to the guard and then fight it head on. If you have a guard and your guard is good enough, well, when's the last time we've seen Khabib smashing anyone in guard? There are 2 issues with it. Not much.
Yeah,
Rarely.
Non-guard, it's usually side control.
Yeah, and half guard, and then
deep half,
all points, or gripping here, riding this hip, or getting to the crucifix. It's all his route. Tony's approach, again, there's a breakdown of this fight that never happened, but it was the way he was thinking about it, I'm sure. From talking to Eddie told me straight up that was the approach. As they put it at the time, we're going to fight him head on. During this phase, we're going to use that, and instead of doing what everyone else does, which is fight it, which leads to this one, which is where he murders us, we are going to go to the guard position. We're going to view the guard as an offensive position. We're going to try to control him and attack from there with elbows and submissions and so on and so forth. There's 2 issues here. One, Tony's brilliant at it, worked really hard at it. I don't know if Conor's doing that with Dylan Dennis and Kavanaugh's very smart. I was in their gym when I did my one-man show in Ireland, and he's a different kind of coach, man. He is. It's real. He's real. It's real. And they think differently and they train differently. It's real, I'm telling you. But so I don't know if that's the approach he's taken, but that's the approach Tony took. Let's not go to me getting away is me going into the place where Khabib murders everybody. Trying to flee and get back to your feet is the time in which you get killed. So Tony's approach was, don't do it. Just fight him head on. Go into his guard and fight him. Now, 2 issues. One is, when I say, we haven't seen people fight Khabib in guard very much, have we? One is the pressure makes them flee it, and so they don't go there. They go use the modern, which isn't modern, but it's the last phase of thinking, to go back to their feet. And that's where you're dead. He's better at smashing you and owning you and destroying you than you are getting back to your feet. And it's a doorway to hell, turning and getting up. So 1, they didn't do it. And 2, maybe he just can't be guarded. Maybe he's just too fucking good, right? So that's a problem. That's a big problem. If that's your approach, it's like, well, here I'm just going to get guard. 1, maybe you can. 1, maybe you can't, and then you're fucked. Because although half guard is still a guard, it's still a way you're going to approach it. You'll have a plan. But the other is maybe you get guard and that motherfucker opens and passes guards so much that we just never see guards because even when they're there for a moment, he's just wrecking them. He's just smushing, wrecking, and destroying guards. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't spent that amount of time looking just at that. But I will. Especially on the flight down to Vegas, it's just going to be all... So we don't know. But that is one potential, at least it's something that hasn't been tried. You might get killed there. I don't know. Certainly not telling you, like, if you're fighting Khabib, go pull guard mid takedown, which is the way you can describe it. While the guy's got a single, instead of kicking back and going to the whizzer and pushing down on the head, you just wrap your leg around him. They call it pulling guard, but really it's accepting the takedown and dragging it into a guard position. That's an option. Then you get your face smashed in. Don't blame me. I didn't say do that. Yeah. But Tony and Eddie were going to do that. Maybe. And if you look at Conor versus Chad Mendes, kind of did that. Yeah. Kind of did that.
And the main variable, too, for at least the Ferguson fight is that how familiar is Khabib with the 10-plan system, rubber guard, mission control? Because that's a unique guard.
It is a unique guard.
And now, so evolved now compared to what... If they bring
if
in
you
someone
study
who
the
they
old,
know is like, this is a 10-planet expert, or they may not know a single thing compared to how the system is now.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's what Tony was going to bring to that party. What would Conor bring to this party? So again, this was Tony's strategy, and I'm not talking out of turn, and I'm not making up bullshit. Eddie told me, Tony told me, Ben Saunders told me. They told me. Like, this is what they were going to do. It's in my breakdown. And I had Eddie on the phone, and he wasn't afraid to do it either. Like, he wanted Khabib to know this. This wasn't like, don't tell anyone, but we're going to look to attack it head on. He wanted this known, right? So that's one possibility. That is a possibility. Be wild. But among the, and hey, your knee-jerk reaction could be like, good luck. Good luck, Tony. And even like more good luck, Conor. You're not as good. You don't know. He slashed up Mendes pretty good. He also got hit hard a few times.
Yep.
But what would you rather do? I'm not saying this is the answer, but what would you rather do? Would you rather try something that hasn't? Would you rather try the thing that everyone tried and never worked? Or would you rather go a different route? So that's one possible answer. And that is probably, so again, you're Conor. Well, if I can keep this going here, I'll punch him a lot, and then eventually we'll knock him out. Oh, he'll grab me. So, and I've used this analogy before. I'm building a piece with my team and the people at TSN, trying to compare this, take this idea and make so thank you for letting me work on this here. Tomorrow, in fact, I'm doing some of it, working on making this understood to a sporting audience. Where I work here in Canada is the biggest mainstream sports channel in Canadian history. It's one of the biggest television channels in Canadian history. And my assignment will be to and I have my guy Sam, who is so good with pulling viz and stuff. We're trying to make a regular audience who doesn't know a lot about fighting in general understand this idea. Now, why? Well, the reason it's so fascinating is there is a very, very good chance, and this is, trust me, wherever I am in my evolution as a martial artist, John Kavanagh, Conor McGregor, it's exponential. They know all this. Khbib knows all this. Khbib knows they know. They know he knows they know. This is not, I'm not breaking any ground here. Where I am breaking ground is I'm realizing that these things are all true. This is what's happening. You should see when I show you some of the stuff Greg Jackson has shown me. Like strategic military, just in a couple of conversations, strategic military flowcharts of shit. It's wild. This is what's going on there. Where I am trying to break ground is finding ways to explain it in a way that I believe can be used on a broadcast, a Bellator or a UFC or One Championship broadcast, in a way that would make the audience love the sport more. That's where I'm trying to break ground.
This way it's not inside baseball.
Exactly.
They get a grip of it.
Yeah. So let me actually Mark just said, does anyone know what the term inside baseball is? Because I have worked at 3 or 4 major television channels in different capacities. I've contributed to most of the large MMA shows in the world, and I've commentated boxing and kickboxing and sumo and everything. And I've heard people say, not too inside baseball. For sure, 60 times. Yeah. That was a television program, short-lived, about 20 years ago, and we're still fucking talking about it. We all say we don't want to do it, but we all still know exactly what it is. There is no... Also, if it wasn't something the audience could handle 15 years ago or whenever it was, that's not... The world changes. We don't want less information. We want more. We're not sitting around going... We're not losing audiences because there's too much cool shit going on. You're losing them because there's not enough. So is this too inside baseball? It's certainly not on YouTube or on iTunes for an audience that loves fighting, but it is for my job. So my job is to find a way to make a regular audience see this. That's the hard part. And the way it's been approached before is just don't even try. Well, I have a producer and a team that says, yeah, let's make it happen. So I'm very, very fortunate. But so here's why this is important to see. I've taken it from the point of view. Why have I taken it from the point of view of how would you beat Khbib here? Because no one's ever beaten him. No one's ever beaten him. Ever. No one's ever handled this at all. Everyone you talk to in any walk of life, especially if they're Khbib fans, you talk to the best coaches, you talk to the best fighters, they all want to know. Not because they are biased against Khbib, because they admire him. This is the test in the world right now. This is the test in fighting, so people want to know the answer. But here's the beauty of it. They've all known to some degree. Many have known. They all know what he does.
It's like the same way people got. It's like the same way when people got excited when Michael Johnson landed that combination on him. It's like, oh, he bleeds.
It's not because they hate Khbib.
Yeah, they just want to see that he's human.
Yeah, when Joe shared that Al was landing on him, or like, oh, we want to know he is human. He's a brilliant human, a seemingly unbeatable human, and we love that. And we all sit there. Those of us who are curious about things are like, could he ever be beaten? What if he's never beaten? Well, how could you try to beat him? This is not disrespect. This is the ultimate respect. But here is ultimately what is so beautiful about it. Khbib needs to close the distance, needs to get a hold of you. He needs to wrestle you and begin the process of taking you down. He needs to overcome your resistance. That's something somebody sent me clips of Teddy Atlas today talking about how fighting is about resistance. This is why Khabib's a fighter, because you resist and he wins that every time. It's a fight when there is resistance, and there's resistance at every step, and he overcomes every step, but not every time. Sometimes Khabib closes the distance, doesn't get a grip. So what does he do? Fucking close the distance again. What does he do? Closes it again. Then he gets a grip. Then when he gets a grip, he starts to wrestle you. Usually gets you down. He doesn't. He's still got a grip. He wrestles you again. You break out entirely. He goes back. He closes the distance. He gets a grip. He gets a hold of you, and he starts the wrestling. It starts the process of tearing you to the ground. He overcomes your resistance at every step, and then finally he gets here. And if at any time you escape, he goes right back to the last one, and he fucking does it again. Over and over and over again until you're defeated. And that's what Khabib is. That's why he's so great.
And that part, the second last part, is the spot that's probably the easiest for a fighter to give up. He can raise his neck just a little bit. It's easy to sink in a rear naked choke. Like, there's a lot of positions in that where you can check out mentally.
For sure.
It's like, oh, Edson didn't do it. Like,
no disrespect to Abel Trujillo.
Did that.
No disrespect to Abel Trujillo. But he gave up here. Mm-hmm. Remember? He's like...
Too much.
Yeah, he and no disrespect, brilliant fighter, and if ever we point these things out, this is still a guy who has got further than 99.9% of people to get to this point, to be in this fight. Like, and I say this thing because I just can't bear to think for somebody to mistakenly think you can criticize these people. This is the 99th percentile of the 99th percentile of the 99th percentile. But yeah, others have just fucking checked out here. They're just like, oh, he's got me. Oh, why would he get 16 takedowns in fights? Because he can't, oh man, I can't. So this at each step. But this one, when you face it head on, at least it's a little different. Will it work? I don't know. I personally thought Tony had a better chance with this, but I don't know. Here's the flaw. Here's where we go back to that influence. If you just join me for this part, you know, we talked about, there's another part you can see on the YouTube channel about influence and how Conor influences us all. But we can be influenced to hate him enough that we say, well, he's going to get killed. You know, his ground game sucks, just whatever. You don't know what he's got. He's big part of his whole fucking life has been not getting you to see what he has. If Eddie can't close the distance, why not? Well, he influenced him to not. Why couldn't he get a grip? If Jose Aldo's trying too hard to close the distance, he ends up unconscious. When Chad Mendes gets him down, he got back up. When Chad Mendes gets him down, he was able to get guard and elbow. He did get hit a lot. With Khbib, maybe it's bad. But you don't know what he has. You also don't know what fucking combination Khabib's been loaded with to time it just right to land it when Conor's coming forward. There's a million variables all the time. I'm not telling you who's going to win because I don't know. But this is a way you can explore it and examine it in a way to enrich your experience viewing it. And that's my job. And I fucking love it. At the time we're recording this is Tuesday, and Wednesday I've got a big job with TSN. We've probably been here an hour and a half.
Hour 40 almost.
Hour 40 almost. There's a few other things we were going... So we were looking at Intagibles, and we were looking at Q&A. I don't think we're going to get to that. However, we might try to get in here again Thursday or Saturday before I go to Vegas.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We will get... If you've watched this and you enjoyed it or it drove you crazy or whatever, come back and watch the next part. Intangibles, and then, hey, man, you know me, like fucking Polynesian navigators and shit, right? I got some shit, right? Of course I do. It might be stupid. It might be brilliant. It's probably a bit of both if I'm lucky. Probably a lot more stupid, but hey, I'm digging. I'm trying to bring you some value. And usually it's these days, because of what I love and what matters to me, is I'm trying to have it not just be about the fight that we're going to watch, but other things in life. That shit matters to me a lot. But so those two, we're going to come back with a podcast on all the platforms and a long form on YouTube, and it's split up into 2 parts: a Conor Q&A that we'll do, and we'll collect some more questions, and a discussion of the intangibles of Conor McGregor versus Khbib. But before we wrap up, we will look at a few of these last things in the Conor versus Khbib fight. Issues of fatigue and energy system expression. The question of Khbib getting hit too much, and then the belief that people have that you can make Conor quit. Wow, these are heavy, man. These are heavy. Should we put those to intangibles?
It does seem more like an intangible thing, because the cardio, honestly, that's the true intangible behind that is based on the weight cut.
Yeah,
and
health,
and the nutrition,
mind, pressure. There's so many aspects of it. Yes, we'll take that to a part of the discussion of intangibles. Khbib gets hit too much. We'll discuss that as well. But
even with that, like, the intangible was, remember that fight with Iaquinta? His dad's yelling at him in his corner, like, stop playing around. Like, he just wanted to experiment. So
exactly. And
hit too much.
Don't say it's wrong.
Do you think
either,
that was by design?
Yeah.
You know, it was by design, technically.
Yeah, and getting hit when you believe he can't hurt you, and you believe you have the fight won, and you believe you need to have more of those moments where you experience this, because you're a fighter and you're going to have to be in these moments when you don't choose it. So you choose it. It's dangerous thinking, but I endorse it.
You're going live. That's all it is. It's
exactly.
like going live.
I endorse it. And then aspects of the belief that Conor could, or that he could make Conor quit. We'll talk about those things. So we'll come back with intangibles in a couple of days. If you watched or listened to this whole thing, thank you. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too. If you follow me, we can't always check the YouTube channel, the YouTube comments. Sometimes we can, but I don't know if you know this, but YouTube is considered the place with the most emotionally not positive comments. I don't know. I'm not saying that's you, but many people consider that. Let's try to change that. Let's see if we can change that. If you've been here since the beginning, and hey, if you're on SoundCloud or Stitcher or iTunes or anywhere else, there's podcasts at Robin Black MMA on Twitter and Instagram. I want to hear from you, because the podcast people are really, it's fascinating to me to get feedback on what this experience is like if you're driving or working out. I'd really like to know. But if you're on YouTube and you leave positive ones, we will, and it's not positive reviews. Don't tell me I'm great. And I'm not saying don't tell me I'm not. I'm just saying everything doesn't have to be negative. One of my points in the world, no matter how tired I am, is to try to share a positive perspective. So I can't possibly engage a bunch of negativity. It's just not congruent with what I'm after.
If you had the energy to to actually do something physically negative, you definitely have the same energy to do something positive, and the world will definitely be a better place doing the positive route.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be better for you and me and the people around you. And it's hard, though, especially when you're tired. Man, fatigue is a real. There the things you can control. If you're very fortunate enough to be able to control these, is you eat a little better, you get a little more sleep, you try to get a little exercise. Walking is just as good as any. And if you can meditate a little bit or read something of value that makes you think, and just stop arguing. Arguing and complaining, to me, it's becoming more and more obvious, I think, as we see worlds of philosophy opening up all over, long-form discussions all over the world starting to happen, where people are respecting each other and trying positively to hear the other person and open up their mind to discussions. I'm so fucking like optimistic when I see these things out there.
It's funny because it happens in real life. It happens every day. Yeah. You know, the only time it doesn't happen is when it's online and it's anonymous, right?
Or on television where it's been dictated to be that way.
How many of these bitch out conversations where you just yell at someone do you have in real life compared to how many you would have online,
very
right?
True.
It doesn't happen in real life.
No, but I'm so optimistic seeing the amount of people that are influencing each other to hear each other and to try to, I mean, just because somebody hates your favorite fighter or wants their fighter to beat your guy, there could be really amazing things you could share with that person about what it is to be a fan and what it is to be part of a tribe and what it is to believe in something and what it is to just if I could just see, like at a sporting event, a whole bunch of people with the opposite flags, like hugging and sharing ideas. I know in the middle of a sporting event that would be very difficult, but it shouldn't be that difficult out in the world right now. It shouldn't be that difficult on fucking Twitter and YouTube. Like, you should, if you can't do it there, you can't do it, and we can do it, you know? So thank you for spending time with me, and Mark will get this up within 12 hours of it recording. We appreciate you sharing it. Please follow at Enjoy the Hostilities on Instagram. Mark, you're going to try to find a couple little spots here. He's going to try to find a couple 1-minute clips to put on from here. I'll share 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 on my site, and then he can share 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 of the breakdowns on the Enjoy the Hostilities, and I think we can add some new ideas by sharing between the two. So anything else? I feel like there's something else important, but I think that's
it for now.
I think we've drained the brain today. So thank you guys very much, and I appreciate you, and excited to hear some feedback. And if we get a little bit, I will apply it, and questions as well, follow-up questions. I will apply it to, what is this? What are we calling this?
This is Enjoy the Hostilities number 5.
Number 5. So Enjoy the Hostilities number 6 will be an extension of this, and any feedback and ideas and questions that you have, I will do my best to incorporate it into there. Until then, blackout.